in 2008, the first rhino were killed on private reserves in South Africa. And from that date, we recognized, in fact, that there was no national body representing the needs of private rhino owners. There are some 400 properties in South Africa under private ownership with rhino. The population of rhino, I'm referring specifically to the white rhino here, is over 5,000 animals, which in terms of the national herd puts us at about 27% of the national population. In terms of capital investment in rhino alone, the private sector represents some 1 billion rand of investment into rhino protection and preservation. That figure excludes land management costs, APU costs, etc. We have been at the coalface of the current poaching crisis in South Africa. Whilst we represent some 27% of the population, unfortunately, we are perceived as the soft target by poaching syndicates. We do not have the privilege of having the army or the police force to protect our borders. So the net result is that we are fighting off armed gangs. We have difficulty securing weaponry. So very often you have an APU unit going out with pepper spray, facing heavily armed gangs who are coming in at different times of day and night. They are sophisticated, they are well informed, and they are brutal in their conduct. Our situation is a desperate one. We are reliant on the economics of rhino to be able to justify and sustain the ownership of rhino. We are being attacked on various levels. First of all, we are losing a rhino. Some 35% of the national loss was from the private sector. If you work that back into rand terms, it's many hundreds of millions of rand that we have lost in assets. Secondly, what a rhino was worth 2008, and if you had to apply an inflationary figure to that, well, that animal should conservatively be worth at least 500,000 rand plus. Sadly, rhino have fallen to less than half that figure. So investor confidence in product rhino has fallen. We are now faced with incredibly high operational expenses, whereas before many reserves did not even have the need for anti-poaching units. There's a very well-known reserve in the Lowveld that historically we're running on an annual security budget of some 900,000 rand. That same reserve today has to find 4.5 million rand only in APU costs to protect their population. So where does the money come from? Due to the economic pressure that we are faced with as rhino owners, added to uncertainty, many rhino owners have now decided that they no longer wish to own rhino. And this results from the either direct loss of rhino having been killed on their property or the fear of further losses. So whilst in the past we had some 400 members, our estimation, and we're busy with a survey on this at the moment, is that that figure has dropped now to about 350 to 360 properties, which means a loss of range for rhino of some 300,000 hectares of land. We are looking for assistance every which way to be able to justify to our owners as to why they should not give up the battle. And sadly, the timing of the Kenyan application to put forward a proposal for a zero quota means that you're taking away the economic viability of rhino ownership. You have seen across Africa, some 23 range states have lost all their rhino. We have lost in the region of 100,000 rhino. 100,000 carcasses, bleached bones in the African sun. That's a sad testimony to man's ineffective ability to bring an end to the scourge of Africa, which is poaching.
So what is so critical at this time is that while rhinos are becoming relatively less attractive to private owners because of the high risk of poaching, they need sources of income to protect their animals. And what we found is that over the years, the trophy hunting market has driven this steady increase in the price of live rhinos. Now, that meant that rhino breeding was attractive, not only to private owners, but also to the parks. The parks were also selling rhinos to the private sector. So this increased demand from trophy hunting, increased prices, drove the expansion of rhino populations. Now we're starting to see that reverse. Now, if we stop hunting, which still provides a very important source of income, we are going to see an even greater disincentive for private owners to own rhinos. And that is going to feed into the whole rhino market and not only adversely affect the private owners, but also adversely affect the state agencies who've been selling to the private owners. It's going to be like a whole house of cards. And the consequences for the whole wildlife, South Africa's wildlife economy, are potentially very damaging.